I wasn't supposed to see that post. It wasn't meant for me. I know how cliché that sounds, like the opening line of some bargain bin horror novel, but I swear to you, when the screen lit up with that thread, when the words stared back at me, every hair on my body stood on end. It wasn't just that the post was disturbing. It was the precision. Every sentence read like a scalpel carving into inevitability, naming names, times, details too sharp to be anything but real. That it wasn't some vague horoscope-level nonsense. No, these weren't predictions that could fit anyone. Like you'll die in an accident or a loved one will betray you. This was different. This was surgical. I read about a girl who would drown in her own bathtub after slipping on a cracked tile. I read about a man who would be crushed between two cars on a rainy Tuesday morning, his final words supposedly caught on someone's dashcam. I read about strangers whose lives, and more importantly, their deaths, were mapped out down to the minute. And the worst part? Every single one of those threads ended the same way: one last comment, a kind of digital epitaph. The usernames of the dead would vanish from the forum, like they had been scrubbed from existence, leaving only silence in their wake. I sat there frozen, my cursor hovering over the screen, refreshing compulsively. The posts were disappearing in real time. Threads I had clicked on minutes before gone. It felt like standing in a graveyard where the tombstones were being ripped out of the earth while you were still reading the names. You'd think my first instinct would have been to click away, slam the laptop shut, and pretend I never saw it. But you don't understand. Once you've seen something like that, it digs into you. It whispers, what if it's real? And worse, what if there's one about you? That's the part that really gnawed at me. The idea that somewhere in that endless scroll, my name might already be written, my death already scheduled. And let me be clear, I did find it. I found the post about me. I know how and when it's supposed to happen, but I'm not ready to tell you that yet. For now, just remember this. You can laugh, you can roll your eyes, you can dismiss every word I say as fiction. But when you find yourself lying awake at 3 a.m, staring at the glow of your screen, desperate for distraction, you'll remember my voice. You'll remember this story. And you'll wonder if there's a thread out there with your name on it. To explain how I got there, I need to go back to the night it all started. We've all been there, scrolling past midnight, looking for something weird to keep us awake. The hours stretch endlessly, the room dark except for the cold blue glow of your laptop. And you tell yourself you'll stop soon. Just one more page, one more video, one more thread. That's exactly where I was that night, lying on my bed, headphones in, mind buzzing from too much caffeine and too little sleep, chasing curiosity down an internet rabbit hole I didn't even know existed. I had started with the usual, obscure subreddits, abandoned forums, fan theories for shows I didn't even watch. The usual garbage of trolls and obsessive fans. It's the kind of browsing that makes you laugh at how ridiculous people can be. Scrolling past endless walls of text where every username sounds like it came out of a meme generator. A place where people argue over nothing, post screenshots of screenshots, and invent entire fictional worlds that no one asked for. A total time sink, yes, but harmless. Usually, that's when I stumbled onto a forum I'd never seen before. Its URL was strange, a jumble of letters and numbers that made no sense. The homepage was bare bones, no flashy banners, no avatars, no animated GIFs. Just threads. Thousands of threads. And immediately, I noticed something odd. Each post had a timestamp, yes, but the usernames were inconsistent. Some looked like real names, some were random letters, and some were familiar, though I couldn't place them. I chuckled at first, scrolling through a thread titled something like "Accidents that were too real to be random." The first few posts were laughable. People describing minor scrapes or coincidences as if they were ominous warnings. Classic late-night internet melodrama. But then I noticed that some threads were disappearing as I hovered over them. Not fast enough to be a glitch, not slow enough to be coincidence. Just gone. I paused. The humor started to fade. A chill ran down my spine as I realized these weren't typical forum errors or trolls deleting posts. It felt intentional. The longer I scrolled, the more unsettling the threads became. They weren't just about minor accidents, they cataloged events, precise events, with dates and details that seemed impossible. One user described a car crash at 8:47 p.m. at an intersection 3 miles from my apartment. Another recounted a freak lightning strike during a thunderstorm that had supposedly happened last week. My laugh had completely disappeared. The forum's atmosphere was oppressive, though deceptively normal. On the surface, it was just another corner of the internet, messy, outdated, full of people who had too much time and too little discretion. But there was something underneath, a current of unease threading through the posts, like the forum itself was aware you were reading, watching, waiting. And then I noticed a comment that made me stop entirely. Better not click too fast. Some posts vanish if you linger too long. I froze, staring at my screen. A joke, probably. But the seed of doubt had been planted. My finger hovered over the mouse. Something about the phrasing was different. It implied knowledge, foresight, an understanding of my own curiosity. I felt like a mouse on the edge of a trap, knowing I shouldn't go further, but incapable of pulling away. That's when I clicked on the first thread and everything changed. The first thread I opened was titled simply, "Accidents of the Week." At first, I laughed. The posts were dramatic, melodramatic even, like people were competing for who could describe the most tragic but unlikely events. One user, Red Sparrow 77, claimed that a man would trip over a curb and break his wrist. Another, Lonely Bite 92, described a cat that somehow ended up inside a washing machine, narrowly escaping death. I scrolled, smirking, thinking, of course these are coincidences. Anyone could write this nonsense. But then the post started to feel sharper, more precise, more real. There was a thread dated just 3 days ago, titled 8:47 p.m. Collision, 3rd and Pine. The post read, username Nightwatcher64, timestamp, 3 days ago, 8:15 p.m. A silver sedan will T-bone a black SUV tonight at the intersection. One will be dead. License plate starts with JQ. Remember the red hoodie? I frown. I lived 2 blocks from that intersection. I'd passed it that evening. I didn't remember seeing anything, but a cold shiver crawled up my spine. Was it possible this was predictive? The next thread made me chuckle nervously. A user named Fading Echoes wrote about a man struck by a falling branch during a sudden storm. I remembered checking the local news that morning, reading about a freak windstorm and a man injured by a tree limb. My laughter faltered. The details matched almost exactly. The time, the location, the man's clothes. I kept scrolling. Nightwatcher 64 again. this time predicting someone would collapse in a grocery store after suffering an undiagnosed aneurysm. I clicked the link to local news, and there it was. Headline: Local man dies suddenly in grocery store aisle. Same age. Same clothing. I swallowed hard, feeling a hollow pit open in my stomach. I wanted to stop, to close the browser, to delete the history and pretend I'd never seen the forum. But curiosity, that reckless little trait that has ruined so many of my nights before, kept me scrolling. Some threads were even darker. A user called Ashen Whisper posted about a teenager who would take their own life, describing the bedroom, the exact book on their nightstand, even the playlist playing in the background. I couldn't shake the sense that these weren't stories at all. They were records, documentation, or worse, instructions. And as I read, I felt a creeping, inescapable unease. I leaned back, rubbing my eyes. At first, I tried to rationalize. Surely it was all coincidences, some elaborate joke, or people making educated guesses based on social media breadcrumbs. But the precision, the repetition, the unbroken chain of seemingly impossible predictions made me doubt myself. I scrolled faster, desperately seeking proof that this was all nonsense. The usernames blurred together, darkly threaded, final post, vanishing point. Each timestamp felt like a countdown. And then I noticed a pattern. The posts weren't just predicting deaths in general. They were predicting them in incredible detail. And those details lined up with real events, news articles, even tweets I had read days before. I tried to laugh again, to mock the absurdity of obsessing over some obscure internet forum. I whispered to myself, "You're losing it. It's just a bunch of keyboard warriors playing clairvoyant." But the jokes didn't stick. My hands shook slightly as I clicked on the next thread. The post loaded, and my blood ran cold. It was eerily mundane at first, a casual username, an unassuming timestamp. But then I read the words, and the hair on the back of my neck stood straight up. The post wasn't about some stranger. It wasn't even about a friend, a celebrity, or someone in the news. It was about me. And that's when I saw my username on the screen. The post was dated 3 years before I'd even made an account. I stared at it for what felt like hours, my brain refusing to process the information. Every word was precise, chillingly so, outlining the manner of my death with a specificity that made my stomach twist. The timestamp was old, yet the username Silent Prophet 23 seemed deliberately placed, like it had been waiting for me to stumble across it. I reread it over and over, each pass peeling back another layer of dread. At first, I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe someone had hacked my social media and written a personalized post as a joke. But as I studied the details, the street I lived on, the peculiar scar on my hand, even the brand of coffee I always drank in the morning, I realized it wasn't coincidence. None of this could have been guessed. None of it. My hands trembled as I scrolled up and down the page. I wanted to look away, to close the tab, to burn the laptop if necessary. But morbid curiosity had me hooked. My mind raced through denial, trying to convince itself this was all just an elaborate hoax. Maybe someone was predicting random deaths, and I was reading too much into it. Maybe the forum was just a bizarre social experiment. But the closer I examined the language, the more I felt the air around me thicken. The shadows of my room stretch unnaturally, the quiet hum of the laptop fan echoing like a heartbeat. I wanted to argue with the words, to type some comment challenging them. But the forum wouldn't let me. Comment sections were locked. Replies were disabled. I could only read and wait, trapped in a one-way conversation with something that might not even be human. Fear began to metastasize into paranoia. Every notification ping from my phone made me flinch. Every passing car outside sounded like a predator circling. I avoided mirrors, afraid of seeing some premonition etched across my own face. Sleep became impossible. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining the scenario described in the post, unfolding step by step, minute by minute. I could feel my life tick down in accordance with some unseen clock, my fate already written in a digital ledger that I had no control over. Yet even in terror, I couldn't stop myself from returning to the forum. I felt like a moth circling a flame, knowing it would burn me but unable to resist the lure. Each time I reopened the thread, I noticed small nuances I hadn't before, subtle phrasing, punctuation choices that made certain details seem emphasized, almost as if the author was communicating in a hidden code not only for me. I know what you're thinking. If it were really that precise, why not just close the tab and pretend it never happened? I wish it were that simple. Once you've read something like this, it burrows into your mind. It rattles around in the back of your skull when you're walking down the street, when you hear sirens wailing, when you hear a stranger laugh in the dark. It becomes part of you, and you realize too late that the curiosity it planted is stronger than any fear you might summon. I'm not ready to tell you exactly what the post said, not yet. There's a part of me that hopes by withholding it, I can keep some illusion of safety alive. But know this, it described my death. Not vaguely, not as some abstract, distant event. It laid out the date, the cause, and a particular, unsettling detail so specific that I cannot stop imagining it. That's when the unease of the forum bled into the real world. Shadows seemed longer. Faces of strangers appeared briefly familiar, as if they were already part of some script. The hum of electronics in my apartment suddenly sounded like whispers. Even the coffee shop I frequented began to feel sinister, as if the staff knew something I didn't, as if the barista had already read the post and was silently waiting for the clock to strike. And that's when I started noticing things offline. The first time I noticed it, I thought I was imagining things. I was walking down the street to grab a late-night coffee, earbuds in, mind replaying lines from the post over and over. A stranger passed me, muttering something under their breath, barely audible. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. My rational mind argued it was nothing. Maybe they were talking to themselves, but the tone, the emphasis, it was precise, like a warning. The next day at work, my friend Jason leaned over my cubicle, eyes wide. "Dude, you look like you've seen a ghost." I laughed nervously, forcing a shrug. "Just didn't sleep well," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew they weren't entirely true. Sleep had nothing to do with the hollow feeling in my chest, the creeping sensation that someone or something was watching my every move. It started small at first. Familiar phrases from the forum appeared in the most mundane places. A sticker on a lamppost had the exact combination of letters I'd seen in a username. Graffiti on a subway wall repeated words from a thread about a freak accident. I saw numbers everywhere, timestamps, random license plates, the total on my coffee receipt. They weren't random. They were markers, reminders, breadcrumbs that led me back to that cursed forum. Even conversations began to echo predictions. At the cafe, the barista joked, "Careful walking home tonight. Streets are dangerous." I forced a laugh, but my stomach tightened. Dangerous? Just like the post had said. On the bus, a stranger sneezed and muttered, "Better watch yourself." The chill I felt was not from the drafty ventilation. It was from a growing certainty that I had crossed some invisible line, that every glance, every word, every passing stranger was part of a larger script I couldn't escape. I tried to test it. I repeated phrases from the threads out loud in random places, half expecting someone to react or for an event to unfold. Nothing happened, at least not immediately, but a lingering unease followed me. Every sound was amplified. The thud of a car door, footsteps echoing on concrete, the hiss of a soda can opening. Every sight became a symbol. The flicker of a light, a crow on a fence, a shadow that didn't belong. Reality itself seemed to warp around the predictions, folding the world into a slow, deliberate countdown. I know how absurd it sounds telling you this. It sounds like paranoia, like the ramblings of someone losing their mind over a forum that probably doesn't exist. But I swear it's not. If you ever see this forum, don't click. Don't scroll. Don't even think about it. There is knowledge there that you aren't meant to have, and once you glimpse it, there's no unseeing. No undoing the way it burrows into your perception of the world. Even my friends started noticing. Late at night, in the hallway of my apartment building, I'd hear whispers. "Don't go out." Not yet. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was someone passing by. Maybe it was the wind. But the repetition, the consistency, it gnawed at me. It wasn't the universe being random. It was deliberate. Every detail matched threads I had seen the way someone leaned. The exact words they used, even the timing of events. Symbols from the forum crept everywhere. A sticker with an abstract glyph I had first seen in a thread about a traffic accident appeared on a lamppost near my apartment. Numbers from a post predicting a storm were suddenly written on a bus stop bench. Every glance at a phone, every receipt, every calendar date seemed like an echo of a prediction I'd read days or months before. I became obsessive, counting and recounting, searching for patterns, for some tiny shred of rationality. And yet, the more I tried to rationalize, the more my world bent toward the inevitable. What had been mundane, the commute to work, a walk to the store, a coffee run, became a landscape of dread, a map of warning signs I couldn't ignore. Every passerby, every casual remark, every flicker of light carried weight. I could no longer exist in a neutral space. The world itself seemed complicit in the threads I had read. And then, the deaths started happening. I started digging deeper, compelled by a mix of terror and morbid curiosity I couldn't control. The forum had dozens of threads dedicated to future incidents, and at first, I told myself I was just looking for patterns, trying to prove it was all coincidence. I read about people I had never met, strangers whose deaths were described in excruciating detail. The exact street corner, the weather, even what they were wearing. It would have been laughable. Until I saw the news that night. There was one post that haunted me more than the others. Username, Fading Echoes. Timestamp, 2 weeks ago. The post predicted that a man named Richard, age 32, medium height, brown jacket, black briefcase, would trip on a cracked sidewalk tile and suffer a fatal head injury while hurrying to catch the subway at 5:17 p.m. I assumed it was absurd. Too specific, surely, but meaningless. The next evening, walking home from the grocery store, I saw the flashing lights of an ambulance near the subway entrance. Crowds had gathered, murmuring. I pushed through and saw it. A man lying motionless on the cracked concrete, paramedics hovering over him. He wore a brown jacket. A black briefcase lay splayed across the sidewalk. Every detail matched. I froze, unable to move or speak, feeling the floor beneath me disappear into some kind of nightmare. People around me whispered the name Richard as the paramedics worked frantically. My stomach churned as I realized the prediction had come true. I wanted to tear my eyes away, to log off and erase every trace of the forum from my mind. But each new post I found made it worse. Username, SilentProphet23. Timestamp, yesterday. A woman in a red hoodie would be struck by a delivery truck on 14th Street at 7:03 p.m. I cursed myself for noticing the small details, the red hoodie I'd seen on a friend of a friend walking past my window. And again, the news came hours later. Red hoodie. Delivery truck. Exact street. Death reported. I started to notice a pattern. The posts vanished once the event occurred. Entire threads disappeared overnight, leaving only an empty forum page. I tried to take screenshots, but even my own images felt altered, blurred in subtle ways, as if the forum wanted to. Erase evidence before I could keep it. This was no ordinary message board. It had rules I didn't understand. It had agency. The paranoia became relentless. I could no longer step outside without scanning the sidewalks for markers, the streetlights for anomalies, people for signs. Every face seemed scripted, every movement preordained. I watched the news obsessively, correlating every new incident with threads I'd memorized. The forum's reach stretching across the city, across the world. Even acquaintances began to appear in threads. A neighbor I'd spoken to briefly on the elevator. Her name, age, and clothing predicted in a post 3 days prior. She didn't recognize me when I saw her later that day, but I recognized her fate before it had happened. I could see the countdown in every detail. Every choice she made unknowingly steering her toward the outcome described in the post. Some predictions were gruesome, almost sadistic in their precision. One described the man being impaled by falling scaffolding while texting on his phone, a scene so vivid. I felt nauseous reading it. Hours later, a news clip showed exactly that scene, filmed by someone on a rooftop. The forum didn't just predict events. It orchestrated them, or at least recorded them with impossible accuracy. I began documenting everything. A spreadsheet, a map, timestamps. Every post, every prediction, every match to reality. It became a ritual, a compulsion I couldn't stop. Sleep was irrelevant. Food was background noise. The forum was a machine, and I had willingly fed myself into it, seeking proof that I was not insane. And yet, the more I confirmed, the deeper I fell. There was an undercurrent I couldn't shake. Some posts were vague, teasing, hinting at knowledge beyond individual deaths. References to the system, the watcher, the ledger, names that repeated across threads like a hidden code. Whoever or whatever ran this forum, it wasn't random. There was intelligence here, a plan, a design, and through it all, the forum whispered my own name, my own thread waiting in the wings. The thought clawed at me relentlessly. It already knew I was watching. It already knew I would see myself. I should have stopped there. But curiosity is a disease, and I was already infected. I know some of you think this is just another creepypasta. I wish it was. I wish I could tell you that it was all random posts, coincidences, and an overactive imagination fueled by late nights and too much caffeine. But it isn't. Not even close. I began returning to the forum compulsively. Every night I would sit in the dark, laptop balanced on my knees, scrolling endlessly through threads that vanished faster than I could read them. Sleep became a memory of another life, replaced by the cold glow of the screen and the endless litany of deaths unfolding in real time. I barely ate, barely moved. My apartment became a shrine to paranoia. Sticky notes with names, maps marked with pins, screenshots of posts I hoped wouldn't disappear before I could capture them. Obsession wasn't just about verifying predictions anymore. It was about understanding them. Who ran this forum? Was it a group of sadistic humans, skilled hackers documenting lives for some twisted experiment? Or something far stranger, supernatural? A sentient digital entity feeding on curiosity, fear, and inevitability? I scrolled through the metadata of posts, looking for patterns in timestamps, usernames, even the phrasing of messages. Everything pointed to intelligence, something deliberate behind the chaos. I tried rational explanations, as I always do. Maybe it was an AI algorithm, trained to scrape public records, social media feeds, and news reports to create hyper-specific predictions. That could account for some of it. But AI doesn't vanish threads the moment an event occurs. AI doesn't write messages in a way that seems almost conversational, almost human, almost taunting. And AI certainly doesn't choose who sees the posts. Some people reported finding threads that didn't exist for anyone else, names that were hidden until you were ready, hidden rules. That was the thought that chilled me the most. Only certain people could see the forum. Only certain people could know. It was a game I hadn't signed up for, yet I had stumbled in by accident, my curiosity marking me as a participant. And the more I tried to step back, the more the forum pulled me in. A magnetic force I couldn't resist. Even offline, the obsession crept into every aspect of my life. I saw patterns in strangers' faces, glimpses of usernames in passing, license plates echoing the strings of letters I'd memorized. Every moment became an event to analyze, cross-reference, and log. My friends noticed my absence, my detachment. I lied, said I was stressed, that work was hectic, that life was boring. But they didn't understand. I didn't want them to. And then there were the messages. Small, almost imperceptible interactions online. Accounts reaching out with vague warnings. Be careful, one said. Another, it knows you're watching. I didn't respond at first. I wanted proof that these weren't coincidences too. But the persistence escalated the anxiety, tugging me further down the rabbit hole. The forum became a living entity in my mind. Rational explanations, hoax, data mining, coincidence fought against visceral terror. A gnawing certainty that I was being observed, analyzed, tracked by something that existed only to catalog life and death. It was impossible to escape. I began to dream of the threads at night, hearing the clatter of keyboards, and faint whispers as though unseen users were discussing me in real time. Then I got a message from someone who claimed to know the truth. The message appeared in my inbox like a whisper from a shadow. No subject line. No name, just a string of characters I didn't recognize. I hesitated for a moment, staring at it like it might vanish before I could read. Then I clicked. I know what you've seen. I can help. Don't scroll alone. That was it. Nothing else. I stared at the screen, heart hammering. Could this be a joke? Another troll? Or something real? I replied cautiously, "Who is this?" Almost immediately, the reply came. Someone who was like you. Someone who thought curiosity was harmless. It's not. I swallowed hard, my fingers trembling as I typed back. What do you mean? Are you part of the forum? I was, but I left, barely. I felt a chill creep up my spine. Left? I typed, not sure why I cared so much about someone else's survival. The forum doesn't just predict death. It chooses who dies. And it knows you're watching me now. Be careful. It already knows you're talking to me. My blood ran cold. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the words. This was no joke. Something was aware. And now, through some fragile connection, I was part of its awareness. I asked question after question, trying to make sense of it. Who runs it? Why? What were the rules? What could I do to survive? The insider answered sparingly, dropping fragments that felt like puzzle pieces too sharp to fit together. It watches, it catalogs, it whispers. Some posts are warnings. Some are instructions. Some are traps. There is no pattern humans can fully comprehend. If you've seen your thread, it's already too late. You're on the clock. The urgency in their words gnawed at me. I typed back desperately, demanding clarity. How did you escape? How are you safe? I don't know. Luck, timing, mistakes it made. I don't ask why. I just survive. You won't have that chance if you linger. I wanted to press for more, to pull the full truth from them. But before I could send another message, the thread disappeared. The inbox was empty. No trace of the account, no sign the messages had ever existed. My heart pounded as I realized I'd been left with pieces of a warning, fragments of a story I would never fully understand. I refreshed the page, desperate to reconnect, to confirm the reality of the interaction. Nothing. The forum itself seemed to mock me. And in that moment, I knew I was alone with knowledge I shouldn't have possessed. That was the last message I ever got from them. If you're watching this, it means I've made it this far, at least for now. And I suppose it's time I tell you what I've been avoiding. The post that has been counting down my life like some cruel metronome. My post said I would die. On September 23rd, at 3:14 a.m., I know how impossible that sounds. I know you're thinking it's just a number, a date plucked out of some random database. But every detail leading up to it has been uncannily precise. Every minor coincidence, every warning, every subtle sign, it all converges toward that exact moment. And now, the date is approaching faster than my mind can fully process. The paranoia is suffocating. Every noise sets my nerves on edge. A door creaks, a car backfires, a shadow moves in the corner of my vision, and my brain screams, it's happening. It's starting. I double-check locks, glance out windows repeatedly, and my apartment, once a safe haven, now feels like a trap. The air is heavy, thick with expectation, like the world itself is holding its breath. I see it in the mundane things too. The microwave timer, a flicker of fluorescent light, a sudden gust of wind, tiny markers of the countdown that only I seem to notice. Every moment stretches endlessly, yet the clock moves inexorably toward its target. I can't escape the dread. Even when I try to distract myself, my mind keeps replaying the forum, the posts, the disappearing threads. The numbers, the usernames, the warnings, they echo constantly. I check my phone compulsively, scanning for any news of strange accidents, anything that might suggest the prediction is unfolding early. But nothing has happened yet, and that's somehow worse, the calm before the storm. Worse, the calm before the storm. I keep thinking about the insider, their warnings, the fragments of knowledge they left behind. It already knows you're watching me. That line haunts me, because I know now it applies to me as well. Any movement I make, any thought I entertain, seems already anticipated, recorded, cataloged. I am a character in a story I didn't write, heading toward an ending I cannot avoid, and yet I wait. Each minute is a torment, a mixture of hope and terror. My mind races through every possible escape, every loophole, every miracle that might prevent what is coming. But the threads, the forum, the posts, they offer no mercy, no deviation from the script. And then the clock struck 3:13. The seconds crawled like insects across the floor, each tick of the clock hammering against my ribs. My apartment felt impossibly still, as though the world had collectively paused, waiting for what was coming. Every shadow seemed sharper, every reflection a mockery of my own movements. I tried to steady my breathing, but it felt like the room itself was pressing against my chest. 3 hours, 13 minutes, and 15 seconds. My phone buzzed with a notification, and I flinched violently. A random message, meaningless on the surface, but my mind twisted it into a harbinger. It's time. I couldn't tell if it was coincidence or confirmation, but the hairs on my arms bristled, and I felt my stomach drop. I glanced at the screen, half expecting to see another post, another warning. Nothing, silence, except for the hum of my laptop, the faint creak of the ceiling, and the irregular beating of my own heart. And yet, in that silence, I felt the inevitability. Every thread, every prediction, every warning I had ignored or laughed at or feared had led to this moment. The shadows shifted. My hands shook as I reached for the keyboard, compelled to document everything one last time. Thoughts collided in my mind, questions I couldn't answer, regrets I couldn't undo, the nagging curiosity that had brought me here in the first place. And somewhere deep in the back of my consciousness, I felt the forum watching, waiting. 3 hours, 13 minutes, and 59 seconds. The air seemed to thicken, pressing into my lungs. Every instinct screamed to run, hide, escape, but my legs refused. My eyes flicked to the corner of the room movement, or just a trick of the light. I couldn't tell. My reflection in the darkened window looked wrong, distorted, as if anticipating the inevitable. And then, nothing, a sudden, horrifying stillness. No sound but my ragged breathing. The seconds stretched into eternity. I tried to speak, to call out, but my voice stuck in my throat, and that's when I saw it. A post, appearing in a thread I hadn't opened, one I didn't remember creating. My username, timestamped for 3:14 a.m. exactly. The words weren't just predictive, they were instructional, direct, final. My heart froze as I realized what it meant. I don't know if I survived beyond that moment. I don't know if anyone will see this. But if you're watching, check the forum. See if your name's there. And think carefully before you scroll. Curiosity is a choice, but some knowledge isn't meant to be found. What would you do if you saw your own death, spelled out in detail, counting down the seconds? Would you close the tab, run, or stare, unable to resist? Think about it as the seconds tick by, because somewhere out there, The threads are still alive, still watching, still choosing.